Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Green. During the documentary, Speaking Frankly, Porn, we heard from those working in the porn industry about how free sites are changing the industry. So Jon Ronson is a journalist, filmmaker, and also the host of the Audible original, The Butterfly Effect, in which he investigated the impact those free porn sites have had on the lives of performers and consumers. Earlier, I spoke to Jon about the insight he gained on the porn industry. We are going to get right into it.
Okay.
The butterfly effect. You take a look at free pornography, but more specifically, sort of Pornhub, which has become essentially sort of the Amazon or the Uber, the tech disruptor of the porn industry. What did you learn about how Pornhub and free porn has disrupted the industry?
Oh, I mean, it's been seismic. What happened was, they all had internet companies, but there were these cumbersome paywall, phone up and give your credit card details to somebody who sounds a bit sketchy, right. and would sometimes, rip you off. And so it was a mess. But they were all making quite a lot of money, so they didn't care. And what they didn't realize was that the way to really, change everything was to create a kind of YouTube for porn. And it wasn't pornographers who came up with that idea, it was tech disruptors. And I think it's the first time that that a seismic, change in porn came not from inside the community, but from outside.
Are we still ashamed? Is that what it is?
Well, I think there is still a lot of shame. But of course, the other thing that's happened as a result of Pornhub is that it's been, porn is normalised much more for young kids than it used to be, which I think has, some positive, but mainly negative consequences. Yeah. One of the negative consequences, I mean, it's all the obvious ones that people talk about a lot, like, for instance, boys trying to get girls to do what they've seen in porn films. Then there's more unexpected negative consequences, like, for instance, the San Fernando Valley is filled with 18-year-old girls trying to get into porn, and that was never the case in the past. In the 90s, if you wanted to get into porn, you knew you were like Bonnie and Clyde. You knew you were making a decision to be a kind of, shadowy, outre kind of, figure. But now porn has been normalised so much for young kids, they just think, oh, well, that looks like fun. I've grown up watching porn. I'm going to go to the Valley to make it in porn. And then what happens is they get masses of work for a couple of weeks, but then there's like a new busload of 18-year-olds, so they just don't get any more work. So now they have to either find a way to supplement their income, which is quite often escorting, or they kind of go back to where they came from with their tails between their legs, but then have to spend the rest of their lives worried the fact that there's like a whole load of their porn on Pornhub. Yeah. Which is much easier to find because, in the old days, like if you worked in human resources at a high school, the only way you'd find out that the maths teacher used to be in porn was if you went to a DVD store and happened to, now of course, everybody's porn's out there for free all over the place and it's really easy to find. So all these kids, who spend a few weeks in the Valley, 10 years later, getting outed and fired from their jobs. Again, because of the hypocrisy of the, human resources person who watched them on Pornhub.
So, the creators of porn are still dealing with a certain amount of shame, I suppose. Certainly the performers more than the creators, but the platform makers, the facilitators, they're still getting loans at the bank.
Yeah.
They still have a good personal relationship with their loan officer. They're still respected.
Yeah, they're fine because they're male tech people who come with a certain, implicit respectability. Yeah. So Fabian Tillman, who was the man who made Pornhub so huge, he was a tech person, he wasn't a porn person. He got a $362 million loan from a hedge fund called Colbeck Capital to basically turn Pornhub and the entire organisation, which went beyond Pornhub, into the sort of monolith that it was, to create an empire that was based to a large extent on the handling of stolen porn made by performers who can't get checking accounts because they're in porn and the bank managers don't want to upset the other clients.
Yeah. Is it our viewing appetite that is creating the algorithm, or is the algorithm creating our viewing appetite?
Right. I think there's probably an unhealthy symbiotic relationship between the two. In the old days, so I was talking to a porn director called Mike Quasar, who's been around since the 90s. You know, when he started out, you know, he would be directing porn films called Women of Influence, or Playing with Fire, or The Billionaire's Blonde.
It's the golden age then.
Yeah.
Yes.
And now all the films he makes are called Stepdaughter Cheerleader Orgy. And it's because of what you just said. It's because they've had to figure out what are the most popular keywords, and then how many of those popular keyword search terms can you fit into your movie title.
So one of the other side effects of this access to all kinds of porn are niches that sort of have emerged, and you sort of focus in on this kind of custom porn that I never knew existed before.
Yeah, normie. So if you have a desire to see a porn film that's so odd nobody would ever think to make it, you can now commission a team of professional porn makers to make that film just for you. And it's partly because Pornhub, for all its millions, billions of films on there, you know, is pretty homogenized. Like, it's pretty, like, yeah. Whereas if you have a massive desire to see a porn star destroy your valuable stamp collection, then you can now commission somebody to do that, which is exactly what A Man in Norway did do.
People's sort of sexual desires, if you will, are sometimes entirely not sexual at all.
Yeah, they come from a place of sadness often. There was a guy, Gremlins Man, and his story was that when he was 5 years old, his mother left, and the only memory he has of her was sitting on her suitcase trying to prevent her from leaving. And now, you know, 30, 40 years later, the way he's working through this is to commission, you know, gremlin custom porn.
You know, that is my question. Why do you think that people often choose porn to work out these unsexy issues that they're having in their life?
Yeah. Well, I think in the case of, you know, the relationship between these custom porn makers in the Valley and these, you know, men, there's a kind of mutual therapy going on, a kind of mutual connection. I think the porn makers are getting something out of it too, you know. It's they like that they can help. I mean, I towards the end of our time making The Butterfly Effect, we heard that there was this kid who wanted, his custom porn thing was that he wanted a porn star to sit cross-legged on the floor and say into the camera, "You are loved, things are bad now, but they won't always be, and suicide is not the answer." So when we recorded, you know, when we were there for them to shoot that, I mean, everyone was crying, the performer was crying, the director was crying, and it did make me realise that, you know, both sides are finding each other on the internet and working out their issues together by making these kind of sad, strange, sweet films.
So here we are in this world where you can pretty much get anything you want. You can find, you can create your own little porn that touches you and moves you in a specific way. You can find some very extreme, some would say, sort of depraved porn on the internet with ease. What sort of impact is this having on our sex lives?
Well, there's a lot of controversy because erectile dysfunction is up 1,000% in young people. Erectile dysfunction shot through the roof, or didn't, around the same time as Pornhub became a big thing. So around 2007, 2008, you know, two big changes in sexuality was the rampant rise of free streaming, easily available porn, and a rampant rise of erectile dysfunction in young men.
You talk about the collection of data and learning about the porn consumption habits, that Mondays people tend to watch porn on their phones.
Yes. So Brandon Retty, who was the head of Pornhub's mobile division, his eyes just lit up when he was talking about this stuff. So yeah, one of the spikes in mobile use of watching Pornhub was Monday mornings. So where are you on a Monday morning? You're at work. I mean, I said, you're in the bathroom at work. And he said, or you're sitting, look under your desk. But I can't countenance that happens, so I like to think of the bathroom.
What do you think we need to know about free porn online and this massive marketplace that is being managed essentially by one porn company that is a data company?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a kind of humanist, the thing that bothers me the most is the impact that's having on the lives of porn performers and porn producers. It's having like a devastating impact on them. Everybody's making much less money, and so they have to come up with new ways to make money, and I think a lot of the time that will be risky stuff like escorting. And you're deliberately, as a viewer, as a consumer, you're deliberately not wanting to know about that because you don't want to feel bad about your own secret habits. So that's my main message for people who watch Pornhub is, you are literally monetarily exploiting the lives of the people who you're watching. And I'm not, I personally speaking, I'm not censorious when it comes to whether or not porn should exist. But I do care about, hypocrisy, and I care about the fact that the 280 or 300 million Americans a month who watch Pornhub are, tangibly hurting the people who they're getting gratification from.
I think that's a great point. I think once upon a time we were told that porn makers are exploiting the performers, and now it turns out
it's the consumers. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people in porn who would say the biggest problems that they face isn't from exploitation within the industry, it's from exploitation from outside of the industry. It's the fact that when they want to leave porn and they go into nursing, they have to, realise at any minute they could be found out and fired.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Where's porn going? What's the next horizon?
One positive thing that Pornhub's doing lately is you are allowed to have your own page on Pornhub where you can monetize, but the monetization is such a drop in the ocean compared to the kind of money they would have made 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. One time we were on a set and this porn performer called Janice Griffith turned up, and she was wearing a Pornhub t-shirt, and she was doing it deliberately to annoy the director, who hates Pornhub and hates the fact that all of his porn ends up on Pornhub. And she said, well, look, I make money from Pornhub. I've got my own page. And he said, well, how much money did you make last month from Pornhub? And I can't remember the exact figures, but she said something like, I don't know, $2,000. And he said, and how many downloads did that equate to? And she said, 300 million.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, well, imagine how much money you would have made, in the pre-Pornhub days.
Jon Ronson, thank you very much.
Thank you.